Hey, Covalence tubers. So, if you were following along with the previous videos in the series, you'll know that we just managed to get Twilio integrated and we have some service capable of sending text messages for us. So, we need to expand upon our registration logic here, and we want to make sure that, well, we have legitimate phone numbers and if they are provided. So let's go ahead and hop into that first. We did a little bit of validation logic in the previous video, and we're actually going to be doing that in this one again. So there are two functions I want to create. One is one to validate that something is a legitimate email, because we have a handful that are like, is string is defined, but I want to have a regular expression validating to a decent degree that what I have is likely an email. And the same thing for a phone number. I actually want to find a regular expression that is capable of validating everything in Twilio's format, which lets us use a country code and then some series of digits. Now, that's going to be tough because some country codes are multiple digits. That one I might have to kind of roll myself. I say have to. Like we could look at. Yeah, so this is gonna look for like tangent stuff. What I would do on. We could let it get sent client side as is. We could do some validation there as well, or we would still want validation to ultimately be done on the server, but I think what I want to do is just strip out anything that is not a number. So well, I say not a number. I want to yeah. So that wouldn't really be like a validator. That would be just like a general string utility. So let's go look at our registration middleware. Let's see. And for this application, we are requiring a phone number. We are making every one of these individual properties required. So we know beyond this point that that should be defined at the very least. Let's see. So let's see, const sanitized phone is equal to phone, which should be a string dot replace, and then we'll replace all of our bad matches with nothing. So we're just stripping out bad characters, but anything that is not any number of digits. Let's see, and we would want, well, this is the replacement, so we'll do our regular expression last, but this means that we're going to strip out anything that's not numbers. But that does mean that we do lose out on our preceding plus sign, which in the event they didn't send a plus sign, you know what? That's for the best. This ensures that we have it. So now we strip out any like parentheses or hyphens or underscores or periods or letters, whatever. As long as it is not a number, it gets stripped out. So we strip everything out. We also concatenate the plus symbol back on top because the plus symbol would have gotten stripped out with this replacement. So that gives us our sanitized phone number. Now, what we have to do is we actually need to make sure that sanitized phone number is is legitimately in the fashion that it has to match this format now. So we basically have to write the reverse of this replacement regular expression with that plus added. So So the match function for strings takes a regular expression, so you give it an expression to match. And if you do have some matches, it'll give you back an array of the matches, which, it's an array. It's got a defined, address in memory. It is a truthy value. If it doesn't find any matches, it's null, which is falsy. So if you don't care about the specific returned submatches, you can just use that as a truthiness falsiness check, which here, I've got is phone as either, a regular expression match array or null, and that is something that will work great in an if statement. If is phone, great. If not is phone, great, we can handle that appropriately. But the regular expression we want to match is we want a plus symbol explicitly, so we do have to escape that. And then just any number of numbers. I really don't know. Let's see. I did pull up this here just to make sure. 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 9. So yeah, I think we're good. So, I mean, we're kind of just doing like a best, fit use case with this. We could also validate like country codes as well if we wanted to get like super granular. This is not like a super production critical application, so I won't really get into that, but we could have a table defined of valid country codes. I mean, honestly, there's probably like a library that has validators for like phone numbers and everything, but let's see. Well, let's see. There are some countries with hyphenated ones or even multiple ones, so those would get stripped out. But I think Twilio would be able to parse that as long as they had the preceding plus. So especially, it looks like if it's like a territory of another country, it has like a hyphenated one. Although worldwide, it looks like about 8 billion people would be able to use this just fine. And then like maybe like 50 million wouldn't. So like just doing a very rough ballpark. I think it's safe to say that excluding the hyphens in there is probably an easier bet. So this lets us check to see if we have a phone number. All right, and if we don't have a phone number, I'm gonna go ahead and send up 400, send up some JSON with message properties saying must have a phone number in the format of +1, 800. What's that damn jingle? I'm thinking of the JG Wentworth 877 cache now. 877. Nah, that's not the... Whatever, that's their customer support line, but... we'll roll with that. So, yeah. we've ensured that we at least have a defined string, and then we do our sanitization, and then we make sure that it fits that pattern. So yeah, we'll roll with that. And I'm going to grab a regular expression from Stack Overflow on validating an email because I am not getting down that rabbit hole myself here. And people are like, here's my really weird edge case of my email being a non, alphabetical character, non-standard email character as one, character. Yeah, I'm fine with not supporting that. I want to use one that's like semi-readable at least. That also doesn't seem like explicitly dangerous. So like I want something with like hundreds of upvotes. This is like a super quick and dirty one. And yeah, so this kind of espouses my intent. Like it will match things that aren't valid email addresses, but it's a matter of getting common simple errors. If somebody does want to register with like a shit email, the real, validation comes from the real act of sending out an email. And if they can never validate their email, they can never access like any features. So it has to be like a legit email, period. All right, and if we don't have an email, we'll go ahead and send up a 400 status code. Cool. Like I said, for the email itself, it's kind of like self-selecting out. If you register with just like absolute garbage data, you'll never be able to receive that email because it won't be able to actually send anything to that address, and we don't let users do anything until they verify, so we have login just completely blocked until verification happens. So, I mean, it's kind of self-selecting, so I don't really need the strongest thing for that. And this should kind of be in a similar manner. We're just going for like the best fit, common use cases here. But we do have the ability to make sure we have a phone number when registering. And then our verification logic workflow, in concept would flow fairly similarly to like receiving text messages. For text, it's generally easier to well, I'm trying to think. If I just want to do like messaged codes to a user, I might do that. So let's go to our services, and I think I talked about this in maybe like the second or third video. I might move this out into like a separate like auth service because, this mailer service up until, that point is dealing with just explicitly getting Mailgun configured. And if I make like a send verification text, I don't know. Well, on the topic of like sending those texts with codes, I do need to get that table set up in our database. So let's see. Need to pause for a second to pull up my env to see which database we're hitting up, because I did. And I want to say the second video in this series, I was attempting to query the wrong database, and I was very confused at why I wasn't quite getting the same responses I was expecting. 1 second. All right, and now that I know which database I'm actually supposed to be querying, which always makes things a little bit easier once you know what database you have to hit up. It is my, let's see. One of the very few things I don't like about Beekeeper is how it always starts in that really small window. I wish it were starting in a larger window. Let's see. All right, I'm going to create a table codes here for like 6-digit codes, you know, sent out via text message. So we'll need to have a user ID column. We'll need to have the code column itself. Let's see. We'll have an issued column, and that I'm gonna let JavaScript take care of that. So we'll let JavaScript manage the issued and expiration. All right. So our code here is going to be not our primary key by itself, because it would be exceedingly rare, but you could have 2 6-digit codes that exist at the same time. So we'll primary key a code for a user. That'll be our primary composite key. So we do need to foreign key our user ID to our users table. And we'll make our primary key the code and user ID together. All right, let's go ahead and make some type changes here. All right, our code has a code property. Let's see. All right. Expiration. I was right the first time. All right. So we have our code being a number. We have issued and expiration being a number too. These are both coming from date.now. So we're gonna have JavaScript, dealing with setting up, and managing the timestamps. Let's see. All right. Okay, I'm happy with that. So I need to go ahead and write some queries for this code table. So I want to be able to delete and create and get codes for a specific user. So there will be 3 queries I think I need to define here. But right. So that deletes all codes for that specific user. What am I doing? All right, so we'll get all codes for a user. I'll be making sure, like, after every action we delete pre-existing codes. I probably could also add the code here just to expand the where clause. So in the event a user did have multiple codes, we would select that specific code object with that specific 6-digit code. We can leave it that way for now, though. And then let's see, I'll get this a little more organized. User ID, code, issued, expiration. And then just to make it a little easier for ourselves, I'm going to just destructure every property out of new code. User ID, code, issued, expiration. And I pull them out in the same order. I actually need to apply them in our array of values. So that makes it easier for us. Let's see. We'll see how I feel about this. Yeah, let's go ahead and add the code in. Just in the occasion there could be like a duplicate code for a user. Maybe they try to like verify their account twice, or they try to log in twice with an unverified phone number, and that triggered off the sending of 2. Then again, like I said, I am going to invoke that deletion between virtually every action that is not a verification for a text message, so we'll see. All right. We've got our default export declared here. let me go ahead and get this imported into our database index and just daisy chained out. So import codes, excellent. All right, well now we've got our queries actually defined. We can go ahead and come to our SMS service and say const, generate auth code. And we'll actually make this general purpose. We won't explicitly make this registration because we can reuse this function for like MFA. So we'll do that. All right, let's see. We'll import the crypto node module to get like a pseudo-random number. Let's see. Let's see. The range between min and max. So you can give, okay. So if I give like 1 billion, it has to be like within 248. Hold on a sec. Let me try this out. So we're importing the node crypto module itself. Sorry, yeah, their wording here is just really ambiguous and really weird. I'm not 100% sure, what they mean by that, but. All right, let's go ahead and run this. I'm just curious to see. Well, sorry, yeah, the documentation on that is weird. Okay, so we are getting, 6-digit numbers, up to 6-digit numbers. So the way it was suggesting is like, the documentation almost reads as if your random number is going to be within 248 of that because you provided the max value and it's going to return a value in, and the value between max and min is such that in falls between that range and that range is no greater than 248. So I'm not exactly sure what they were meaning by that, but it is nice to know that we can verify the code isn't weird, it's just their documentation of that. Okay, so oh, whoops, It's not IE7. Too much too much web development brain. 1 times e to the 7th. Not IE7. Goodness gracious. Too much Internet Explorer for one lifetime. Let's see. We'll need to pass in the user ID. So we will need their phone number unless we want to give just their user ID and then do a lookup of that user. Let's just kind of get this assembled first, and I'll reshuffle as I see fit. So the user ID code is random. Let's see. Const issued is equal to date.now. Const expiration is equal to issued plus let's see. Do I have that number, that message expiration as a constant? No, because I made my tokens. Sometimes if I do email verification, I will do like a mailed code itself, and that way, since it's not a JWT and it doesn't self-expire, I have to expire it myself. All right, we'll do that here. So we're passing in our user ID here. We create, our random code. We store that in the database. Before we do that, I will go ahead and execute the deletion for that user. So we're just trying to make sure we don't have any situations where there would be overlapping codes, but so we delete any codes that exist for them. We go ahead and create a new one. And then we can go ahead and, I guess, send it out here. Yeah. So send text requires us to send the message. So we'll say, here is your code, then random. Let me rename that to code, although, okay, no, I don't have any scope conflicts with that. I'll name that to code, which lets me shortcut this object. All right. So just kind of the usual spiel, like we're never going to call our users and ask them for the code for this app. So there's no like MFA kind of scam going on. And then the phone number itself, whose data type is a string, it's going to be that phone number variable we pass into this function. So Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I'm trying to keep this as generic as possible. Well, I say that and I've got a hard-coded string in this function. We just need a daisy chain in our message. And then
Andrew, here is your reminder. Advanced topics
we
webinar.
can well, we'll be using this in a well, yeah. We'll just kind of daisy chain the error up. Okay, I'm happy-ish enough with this. I might come and fiddle around with it more in a bit, but this is kind of as generic as I can make it, I think. So, we've got generate auth code. What we can do now is, so for this, I didn't want to make phone stuff like super critical. Per se. I don't necessarily want to force that. But, you know, whatever. We'll make our user verify both their email and their phone number upon registration. So let's see. All right. So the generate auth code function takes the user ID. Well, we had our database just generate that for us, and we extract it out. We need the user's number, which we've validated is at least like an okay-ish formatted phone number. So we'll pass that in here. And then the message that I had hard-coded a minute ago, I'll go paste it back out. Ah, shit, but I need scope of the code. Well, the thing is, generate auth code, I'm using this function strictly for generating these auth codes, regardless of their intent. So if this is for verification or for MFA, that's totally fine. So you know what? Cool. So they'll get a text message with that code, and then we can do some handling on the client side on like the registration page that maybe has a conditional modal popping up for the text message code, and then we can have a verification route for that. So let's go ahead and we're done with our registration workflow with that. Let's see. I'll update this message here to say, please check your email and text messages to get further info on verification. And you know what? Now that we're here, let's go ahead and force phone verification. Why not? So we had our original if block checking to see if they were not, if their email.verified column was not set. We'll just add in an else if after here and switch this up to phone verified. And instead of await send verification email, it's going to be SMS dot generate auth code for who we have the ID from who's attempting to log in. So at this point, you know, we've already checked their credentials. We know who they are. Let's see. Oh, it's under the user object. And then the user.phone for the number. And I mean, my text messages code's, you know, expiring in 15 minutes. But yeah, so now we have enforced email and phone verification in order to log in. So unless somebody has legit, you know, credentials, they can't do anything. So I guess this is kind of like the turning point for the app where we are maybe going to be a little more emphatic about text message reminders. I was thinking, you know, we would maybe do like weekly and daily emails and maybe like a weekly or like monthly text message. But with this enforcing that, I might consider doing more text message based features like, you know, texting a daily, you know, update or something. So what does this app do that Google Calendar doesn't? I don't know, probably nothing thus far. But, you know, I'm having fun writing it out, and I hope you guys are having fun watching it and following along. Let's see. Well, I might actually call it at that. Just getting that auth code setup going. We still have to go through verification. That's not going to be too bad. Well, yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and do the text message verification. Const verify phone. Let's see. So one of the issues is like knowing who is actually making the request. We can't definitively say who is making a request until they've authenticated and are logged in, but we're also blocking logins until they've verified. So we kind of have like a little catch-22. I might just have the user like input their email alongside the text message verification panel. That way we can do a lookup of the user, get their ID, and then do some lookups. Because like we wouldn't expect the user to know like their ID. Like that's not something that, you know, we will ever have users input. But their email is effectively an ID. It is marked as unique in the database. So thank you to my Covalence tubers for being my perpetual ear that I can rubber duck all of my questions out to. I'll populate that with more appropriate and fitting message momentarily. Let's look at our users queries. Find by will let us, yeah, find a user by email. Cool. Let's see. So the thing is, like, you can't really intercept anybody's code per se in this step. You know, we're going to be looking up the code in the database by the code itself and also the user ID. So like, you've got a 1 in like, I think 10 million, you know, chance of checking that, which like these also expire in just a few minutes, and also like this just verifies another user's account for them. So So if somebody tries to log in and they mistype their email, or it's a bad email or whatever, we 401 them, and then we can extract out the user ID, and that will let us look up any, you know, existing codes in the database. So const code object, we'll call it that just because that's the database code, or like DB code. And then get for user takes a user ID, which for us is the user object's ID property. And then the code is the code from the rec body. And in the event we don't have a code for that user, I'll go ahead and send up an invalid credentials, but what I actually want to do is resend, you know, that auth code for them. So I'll just await SMS dot generate auth code for user.id to user.phone. So in the event they just screw up the email, you know, general 401, in the event they screw up the code, or no code, no such code exists, we'll go ahead and we will regenerate a new one. I would delete existing ones here for that user, but this if block has literally just validated that there are no existing ones. So that would be kind of useless, but beyond that, that lets us actually get db code, which we can check dbcode.code and then dbcode. Let's see. Well, let's go ahead and destructure everything out of dbcode. We're going to have an issued and expiration. Actually, we don't even need an issued column. We technically just need expiration because we're checking it against the current date. So yeah. Now we do have a variable naming clash here. So for our destructure, we will alias this out to I don't want to call it db code. I'll call it random. I'll call it stored code. All right, so here we'll check to see if stored code equals code from our rec body. And we'll do a loose comparison here because in the database we are storing it, I think, as a pure number. It'll be derived from an input client side, so that's going to be coming down as a string. So we'll just do a loose comparison between the two. We'll say if it doesn't match up, or if it does happen to match up, but the current timestamp is greater than the expiration time. Right? Yeah, if the current timestamp is bigger, that means it's after. Sorry, programmers and dates. So this lets us validate that, yeah, it's bad. Let's see. We'll do a 403 for this maybe and say code was invalid or expired. Because, you know, it's not a 401. Like, we know who they are, actually, at this point in time. So we'll say to check your text messages for a new code. And, you know, in the event that it fails for whatever reason, boop, we'll go ahead and generate the auth code. And what we'll do right before that is await db.codes.delete for user.id. So for whatever reason that token failed, that code failed, we'll obliterate that, delete all the codes in that code table for them, and just regenerate a new one, and boom. So that takes care of our verification logic for all of our failing edge cases. And now we need to write a database query that marks that phone verified to true. So we'll go ahead and jump to that real quick. And these I should have named that function verify email from the start, but whatever. And we have the user's ID in scope of where we'll be using this function. So verify phone takes the ID, updates users, set phone verified equal to true, where ID is equal to 1. All right. Boom. So we've got that defined. We can await db.users.verify phone, passing in user.id here. All right. So if they type out and send the right code, we will eventually get to this line of code, which sets the verification status to true, which will then successfully let them log in. And that means for my email verification, cool. So for my email verification, I don't actually generate a login token, which is good because I would have to delete that otherwise. Oh, and these to-dos we can actually update because we now have code that can send email and send text messages. I don't have like a logging service, so I'm just dumping this out to the console. At a later point in this app, I might make or integrate some logging service, but for now, there's a lot going on here. We have a handful of different database calls being made and some Twilio calls being made as well. So there's a good potential amount of code in this block that could potentially die. So verify phone, now done. This change MFA, here our preference was, hey, if you don't have your phone verified yet, you can't change up your MFA preference. Well, now we can await sms.generate auth code. We've got the rec.user.id, and then the we will actually have to do a user lookup here to get their email or their phone number, just because my email verification, well, needs their email, and then my text verification, the auth code, it needs that. So yep. All right, well, db.users.findby. Then I don't have ID as an available column here, but we will go ahead and add that just because we do have scope of that in our token. So go ahead and extract our user out, if not user. And what I'll return for this is kind of the same general, like 401 invalid credentials. For all of my 401s, I generally prefer sending up the same type of response. So this find by query, we'll go to type definition. Columns only accepts email and username right now. We can expand that to have ID. So now that's happy. And we now have our user object. And then we now need to provide our phone number, which is going to be available in the user object phone column. So that sends our auth code. And now this long forgotten line to send verification email to whom? Well, that user object dot email. All right, so we had kind of a spider web of connections of services for this, but we have a lot of functionality now that we are just about done with the backend. We are really, really close to client-side stuff. There might be a few more routes to define, but overall we really, really, really have wrapped up a majority of our middleware and service and controller logic. So yeah, so I guess we'll go ahead and maybe have one more backend video, and after that we'll get to the client side, and all of our hard work thus far will finally have some tangible results to visually see. But if you've been enjoying this video series, go ahead and make sure you subscribe, and that way you can be notified when the next video of this series does drop. And if you have any suggestions for things you'd like to see, I love checking out comments for feature suggestions or questions, and I love integrating stuff that y'all do ask. So yeah, go ahead and drop them, and otherwise I will catch y'all later.